once you give the health authorities power, they will never get it back. One man who knows all about this is John Hinderaker, lawyer from the United States and author at the Powerline blog. John Hinderaker, thank you so much for joining us today. I need to ask you something. I keep hearing all of this crazy talk out of the United States. You know, there are people saying that the U.S. is in a recession, but that can't be because, I don't know, you've got 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, but apparently that's not a recession anymore. Can you explain this to us, John?
Well, James, liberals have this kind of childlike idea that they can change the definitions of things, and by doing so, they are altering reality. I mean, this is a wonderful example of that. We've had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. That is the classic definition of a recession. And in fact, there are multiple places in federal laws and federal regulations that actually define the word recession to mean 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. And despite that, the Biden administration is trying to spin these numbers and say it's not a recession, it is a transition. And transition to what? I have no idea, and I don't want to find out.
And I guess if you claim that you're against this transition, then you're transition phobic. But Rita,
well, you know what? If they can change the definition of women, they can change the definition of recession. And I think this change is now evident in Wikipedia, and they've locked out people from changing it back to what it's always been, which has been those 2 negative quarters. But I mean, the American people care whether they're technically, or if the media are calling it a recession or not, because they're feeling it. They're feeling it with the energy costs, gas, and food. Food is gone up, exceptionally up in the States. That's really what's hurting people.
No, that's exactly correct, Rita. I don't think that the definition of recession is a big deal. It makes the administration look kind of stupid. But what Americans care about is that they can't afford to put gasoline in their cars, and they can't afford to buy groceries for their families. Inflation is the killer issue. And right now, you know, we have a tight job market. We have a low unemployment rate. It's a very odd kind of recession. But the real issue is inflation, and that issue is not going away. And the Biden administration has no answers.
Well, they don't have any answers, and they've been, as obviously we know, because they're saying it's not a recession. I mean, they were saying last year, almost a year ago, OK, we're hitting the peak now of inflation. The same was said again in December. The same was said 3 months later. The same is being said now. It just keeps on going up and up. There is no plan from the Biden administration to rein any of this in, is there?
Well, there's no plan. On the contrary, you know, right now we've got this, I think it's about a $250 billion bill to subsidize the chip industry. Apparently, Senator Manchin has signed on to a scaled-down version of Build Back Better that is countless hundreds of billions of dollars. We'll see if it actually becomes law. I don't know. But all of this is more deficit spending. This is pumping out hundreds of billions of dollars behind which there is no economic reality. The only thing that can do is increase inflation. Now, whether those dollars get pumped out in time for the election, I don't know, likely not. But everything the Biden administration is doing has the effect of increasing the cost of living, not decreasing it.
And John, you know, that bill, that Build Back Better bill, that scaled down version, it's talking about giving people subsidies for solar panels, subsidies for electric vehicles, but it's not actually doing anything to help people with their cost of living. I mean, is this just this green dream scheme that is just, we're seeing this here in Australia too. This must be infuriating to ordinary Americans.
Well, it is, James. It is the green dream, exactly. Now, Joe Manchin comes from the coal mining state of West Virginia, and so nobody knows exactly what this thing says yet. We haven't had a chance to read it. But reportedly, it includes some measures that would help support nuclear power, that would also require the federal government to re-engage in leasing oil and gas on federal lands and offshore drilling and so on. And so it's a very mixed bag in terms of energy. But of course, what the federal government ought to do is just get out of the way. don't subsidize everybody, subsidize nobody, and let the chips fall where they may, and let the people have affordable energy.
Well, no, let's just pump billions more into the economy and pretend it's not going to impact inflation.
No, of
that
course
worked
not.
well
Yeah,
last time around. I want to ask you about the wall, because Biden is building sections of the wall. Tell us about what's brought about this change in mindset.
Rita, it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Trump had about 60% of the wall built by the time he left office. Biden said this is terrible, racist, awful. On his first day in office, he issued an order terminating wall construction. Well, there are 4 gaps in the wall in the state of Arizona, and illegal aliens are streaming through those gaps and creating huge problems in Arizona and the border communities. Arizona, as you probably know, is a swing state, and we've got an election coming up. So all of a sudden, the Biden administration is now moving to close those 4 gaps. And they go through the same kind of mental gymnastics they do about everything. They say, oh, it's terrible. Those gaps are attracting illegal immigrants, and they're drowning in the river, and border agents are dying trying to stop them. So we got to close the gaps for the sake of safety. Well, of course, that's why the wall was being built in the first place. And what's attracting the illegal migrants, who in many cases, yes, are dying and being abused and so on, is the Biden administration's open borders policy. That's the problem. And yet they're not doing anything to change that fundamental error.
And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but what it proves is the underlying conservatism of people in America that is out of touch, or the Biden administration is out of touch with. And the minute they realise they're in trouble, oh, we've got to do something about it. I mean, seriously, we can see straight through this. It's cynical, isn't it?
Well, it is cynical, and everything is driven by politics. Everything is driven by the next election. And one of the things that frustrate the Democrats is they keep shoveling money out at people, and they're not buying as many votes as they thought they would. And sometimes they express this openly and say, what if the people forgotten that we sent them $8,000? Why is Biden, in the 30s in his approval rating? Well, the answer is that because most Americans don't want to live by having the federal government shovel money at them. Most of us want to be able to provide for our families. We want to have good jobs. We want to have a thriving economy. We want to have a secure border. We want to have national security. We don't want to be humiliated like we were in Afghanistan. And the Biden administration is always scrambling to try to make up for the political deficits it has because of its terrible policies, because of its abject failures. And you just can't, at the end of the day, you can't do it.
John, shifting gears to 2024, what's going to happen with Donald Trump? Is he going to run again? Is he going to declare sooner rather than later before the 2022 midterms?
James, I don't know. I have friends who have told me that Donald Trump has privately told them that he's running again. And that is certainly consistent with everything that he has done publicly. He seems to be doing everything that you'd have to do if you wanted to run in 2024. I don't know when he might announce. I've heard really no meaningful rumors about that. My own view, as I think you may know, James, is that I'm an admirer of President Trump. I thought he did a terrific job in his one term in office. I don't want him to run again. He's got way too much baggage. I think he's the one Republican who could actually lose in 2024. And the issue of age is a really important one. Trump is 76 years old. He'll be 78 in 2024. He would be 82 if he actually completed a term. And we Americans have seen what it's like to have a president who is elderly, who is frail, whose faculties are declining right before our eyes. And I think most Americans want to move forward, not back, and they want to move to a generation, to a candidate who is of a younger generation. And so personally, I hope that Donald Trump doesn't run, but supports a great candidate like, say, Ron DeSantis or whoever it turns out to be.
Rita.
Well, Ron DeSantis, what if he agrees to be Trump's Veep? Would that be the dream team, or do you still feel that Trump's got too much baggage to run again?
Well, I hear people say that, Rita. I don't think it's the dream team. vice presidential nominees don't sway votes, right? That's the conventional wisdom. And I seriously think there's a risk that if the Republicans nominate Trump, Biden won't be on the ticket. He won't be the Democratic nominee. They are going to nominate somebody younger, somebody less well-known, somebody more popular. And I think there's a very real danger that Donald Trump, with all of his baggage and with all of the negativity that has surrounded him, is the one Republican who could lose that election.
We're already seeing DeSantis being presented as this just evil governor. I mean, some of the media reporting on him is just unhinged, and yet he's enormously popular, enormously effective. And it's interesting the support he also has in the Hispanic community. Just tell us about that shift, that demographic shift where people in that community are recognising that the Democrats don't really share many of their socially conservative values.
Socially conservative values, but it's more than that, Rita, because many, many Hispanics are small business people, and liberal policies are death for small business. And most Hispanics are very much opposed to this open borders policy, to this massive illegal immigration, in part because so many of them do live in border states. I think that the midterm elections are going to be a bigger rout for the GOP than most observers are now predicting. And one of the main reasons I believe that is because I think we're going to see this swing of minorities, that includes blacks, but especially Hispanics, to the GOP. We've been seeing it in some of the races so far. I think we're going to see it in spades in November.
John Hinderaker, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to you again soon on this program, I'm sure. In the meantime, you can read John Hinderaker on the Powerline blog. Go and Google that. Check it out.